Ja. Hej. Hej. Välkomna. Här är många nya. Någon som inte varit med här innan räcker för hand. Idag tar vi det på engelska. Vi har gäster här som inte pratar svenska. Dels som Maria vill gärna göra det på engelska. So, in English. Welcome. This is what we will discuss today, understanding digital natives. And Marika will take that. I will not do that. I'm just going to show you a little bit of the agenda for today, starting with Marika. After that, we will have some moment for questions to discuss the topic for today. And we will do that for 25, 20, 25 minutes, something like that, and we will have a little disrupt to talk about something that is disruptive. So if you have anything that you think of right now, something that's innovative, disruptive idea or something like that, so please save it for the last 5 minutes, and then if you want to, you can. I would like you to share with us your disruptive idea. Maybe it will pop up something during the presentation from Marika. After that, 12:30, we will end this session here, and you are very welcome to stay and to continue the discussion if you want to. But officially, the social medical lunch will be over. Does that make sense? Yes. Good. And if you want to follow this on Twitter, please use the hashtag SMC Skåne. Didn't write that down. So, with that, I welcome Marika. Yeah. And one more thing. I'm video recording this, so if someone feels uncomfortable about that, please let me know, and we will just shut that down. Or everyone is okay with that? Yeah. Great.
Because we have Okay, yeah, I have to take it in English. I do speak a little bit Swedish, so if you want to discuss later on in Swedish, that's fine. But since my research language is English, I talk much rather about it in English. Otherwise, I always tend to mix the languages, and then it gets very confusing for everyone. So, yeah, I'm coming from Lund University, where I'm researching about something that I call, well, digital everyday life. And I have this little USB key. I put it now everywhere I go. It's this one here, because this is kind of, it was the starting point for my research, because yeah, when I was always having this idea of, you know, doing something about this digital in our everyday life, and thinking about it, this thing is so invisible, actually. Well, not anymore, not for me, but it plays such a big role because you know, like my life is on it. You know, every time I work, I back up every 5 minutes on the USB key, and it's always on my keychain. And so that's why I put it everywhere, and I think it kind of represents very well how we integrated digital information in our everyday life. So I'm going to talk now about digital natives, and this is a term that became really, really popular in Germany. Especially, I don't know if you followed it a bit, but last week the German Pirate Party, yes, the Piratpartiet, the German one won in Berlin 8.9%. And ever since then, German media just go crazy about digital natives and their role in future society. So the idea behind this, when I kind of digged into this topic in my research, was what does that actually mean? Yeah, like what is a digital native? Because it's not really, yeah, I mean, it's not really well defined. There's this guy who came up with the term, well, his name is Prensky, and well, he says basically, okay, this information technology is shaping a new world, and in this new world we have natives, you know, the ones that grew up with this digital technology, and we have immigrants that are the ones that came later into the world, And just like with natives and immigrants, the immigrants can kind of learn the new language and all the symbols and codes, you know, but they will never be really fluent with it. They will always struggle, while the natives are somehow really good. And yeah, actually that concept, that idea, I mean, that's nothing new. I mean, he came up with it, I think, in, what was it, 2001. But I mean, there was a guy who was a bit earlier with that, his name was Tapscott. He already, like, he wrote earlier already that today's kids are so vast in bits that they all think it's part of the natural environment. To them, the digital technology is no more intimidating than a VCR or a toaster. Kind of funny in that context, that it's VCR. But yeah, I don't like that quote, and I'm gonna tell a bit more why I really dislike that quote, because it kind of represents a very, well, immigrant thinking of digital natives. But I will get to that later. I just want to dig a bit into, you know, the academia, because, yeah, I was like, okay, what is a digital native? Okay, they grew up with technology. What does that mean? You know, it's like why? And the problem is that this concept is really, well, there's a concept, there's this guy here, that's Pierre Bourdieu, and this is the guy in ethnology where I'm coming from. We always get back to him because he wrote this great stuff about culture, and he said that everyone has a habitus. And my advisor actually said once that the habitus is nothing else than a sedimented life history. It kind of means that everything that we, well, experience during our socialization, how do we apply that in everyday life? So that was actually a perfect concept for me, because that was what I was looking at. I was looking into, okay, we have the digital technologies embedded into this habitus. So what are we doing with it? What are the natives doing with this concept? And then I did what ethnologists do usually. I went into the field. And I know that this qualitative data gets, this kind of qualitative research gets very popular right now in all kind of usability research, and there's a lot of interviewing and focus groups going on. I mean, I've worked in that area myself. But there's one problem with interviews. And that's kind of, you know, us as ethnologists, we don't really trust people. We say what people say is never what they do. Or, well, it's not really the same what people do. So what I did observations. This is photos from the field. I basically had my informants, young people between 20 and 22, and I went to their home at 8 in the morning when they just had showered, and I followed them around the whole day with a little block, and it was very interesting. It's called shadowing, that technique. And you can see amazing things. One of the things you can see is that the digital is not as important as we like to think that it is. Yeah, that's kind of a thing later on when I did interviews. You know, I finished everything with an interview to compare what I heard with what I saw. And I usually ask them, okay, what went wrong? Because this is what we as ethnologists want to know. We want to see, okay, when were interruptions in the everyday life? Because when there's an interruption, we can actually see what is happening. And yeah, that's very ethnological and very much. And you might also think right now, yeah, why is she talking about everyday life the whole time? Like, why is she talking about what they do? I mean, now I have pictures of papers and stuff. We're talking about social media. But that's the thing. It's kind of all in there. And when I asked them in the interview, can you describe what you did? Can you describe interruptions? I didn't ask like that, but, you know, kind of in the talk. I wouldn't get answers. Because the things were integrated in their everyday life. When I would ask, I did, by the way, the same thing with immigrants. I mean, you know, we have to put it in a context somehow. If I would ask an immigrant, the immigrant would be like, oh yeah, these, yeah, and then I was on Facebook last week. And, you know, and then my computer is always broken. The internet never works. Or maybe he would say, oh, my computer is the greatest thing in the world, and it's so great that we have internet nowadays. A native would never say that, because the internet is just there, you know what I mean? It's not really, we have always this thinking that this internet, the digital media, that's the big thing. So, I mean, I did this kind of thing that I built networks of stuff that we have here, and this is not my idea actually. I mean, this is active network theory, but I don't really want to go deeper into that. But I looked into it, and you have to think of everything is connected for natives. You know, if you would have this thing for an immigrant, I didn't have it on my computer crashed last week. Yeah, interruptions in everyday life. You know, for an immigrant, this would look a bit different. It would be like the networks of everyday life, and then there would be the computer here. You know, and if there's an interruption, the whole networks would basically explode. Okay, this part I want to talk about later. So we have to rethink the concept. That's what I'm saying, and I tell it to people all the time, because every time I go to conferences and stuff, and people are talking about these young people using media, I hear things like, they're always online and they know all that stuff about, you know, yeah, whatever. You know, that's not the important thing. There I have to quote again, and this is what I really don't like about the quote. What is the point? There is no difference between a toaster and my laptop. There is no difference. It's my toaster and it's my laptop. The toaster I'm using to make toast, the laptop I'm using to go to Facebook. Okay, I'm getting really upset about this, because people talk about it like it was two different worlds, you know? We have the normal world, our normal everyday life, my piece of paper, that's like the normal world, and then we have the online world, the digital world, that's kind of special. That's immigrants talking. That's not like that. And this is a quote from another guy who wrote in 2008, society, the information society is a society where digital information is at its root ideological. And that's a problem, because that's not the, in my opinion, that's wrong. That's not the information society. The information society, if we are gotten to it, or if we're getting to it, as soon as the natives are all grown up, digital information is digital information. It's not ideological. Okay. But what I really want to talk about now is, we have to rethink the concept. So we have to kind of get to them. We have to kind of know, if I'm working with social media, what do I have to do now to do things for them? You know, what do I have to look at? I mean, now we know that they have integrated the digital in their everyday life, but where is that leading to? You know, what am I doing if I want to make a Facebook group, if I want to market my company on Facebook, for example? One thing about this, and I had this slice network, and I have to go back to it here. When we look at the networks, yeah, I'm going back to the habitus now. Because, okay, we have a digital thing, a Facebook, for example. We have a Facebook account. And we have the Facebook account, of course, does not stand for itself, because you need an internet connection in order to be connected. I mean, here we're talking about networks again. These things always work in the combination. So we have that, and we have, this is, by the way, Kirsten's network of the everyday life. And she has all that stuff. She has her iPhone, and she was checking all the time. And then parts of these networks are actually connected to feelings or ideas, something that has been accumulated here in the habitus. Kirsten, for example, she's not very nerdy. She's actually quite a left-wing girl. You know, she dresses not very. You know, she dresses more like a politics student and not so much like a law student, or you know what I mean. And she's very committed, and she's not really tech savvy at all. By the way, another thing. I mean, digital natives are not necessarily tech savvy. But she has an iPhone, and she loves that iPhone. And you know, I'm an Apple freak myself, so I was always kind of assuming she just liked the iPhone because it was from Apple and it was an iPhone. No, but it wasn't the case. She just got it from her parents, and she loved her iPhone because it helped her to organize the stuff. And the thing is with Kirsten is also that she has this left-wing attitude, but then on the other hand, she's also she likes to organize. Everything in her life is very neat and very clean. So Kirsten's iPhone was kind of the thing that connected her to a lot of her habitus dispositions. And on the other hand, she was very social, and very, very often I followed Kirsten around. Kirsten had her iPhone like this, oh, luckily I have one, and her friends were like standing around her and like, oh yeah, can you check that for us, because you have the cool iPhone and you have the internet connection on your phone. And Kirsten was saying to me very, very often, this is kind of the great thing about this. It's kind of, it connects me to this. But I mean, this only played a role in the context, you know? That's why I wrote it, contextualize. You have to contextualize the thing. So what happened to Kirsten's iPhone is it got a high I call it disposition value, and then I have another nice graphic for that. No, that was not smart. Okay. This is a kind of a concept that I developed. Things have functional value, of course, and the iPhone has a very high functional value. You can do a lot of things with it. You know, you can check your emails and all that stuff. You can go on Facebook. Facebook has a very high functional value because you know, make your events and all that stuff. Twitter actually has not such a high for me, but interesting. I'll get to that back. But then some things have disposition value and some things just don't. And the worst thing that can happen to you is if a thing is, well, this is kind of the worst thing, but if it's here, because then people are not gonna spend money on it, then people are not gonna value it. The thing is now, back then, when we were all kind of spoiled by the immigrants being, you know, for an immigrant, if something was digital, it's ideologized, it's cool. If a laptop has a high function, it doesn't matter. You know, it's, wow, it's even faster. And you still have, it's kind of complicated, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't work like that anymore. And many, like Apple, for example, has understood that. Now you have to give things this, you have to give them disposition value. You have to make them attached to the person. And, you know, I mean, here we get it back to my fieldwork again. There are things that, sometimes there are things, for example, this here is really interesting for me. Because this is something that I call value carrier. It had a very, very low functional value, and it's an old radio, but it's a huge disposition value. And this is where we have to get to. And when we look at things like Spotify, for example, we see that Spotify has a huge disposition value. iTunes, when they started, had a huge disposition value because they were connected to the music taste. I mean, what is more embedded in the habitus of a person than music taste? I mean, this is kind of how we express ourselves, how we have our, you know, how we want to express our identity with music. I mean, suddenly, I don't know if you read, I was really shocked when I saw that music that I listened to on Facebook was suddenly showing up, and I was like, oh my god, this is the most embarrassing thing ever. You know, Minecraft and music taste, and now everyone can see it. Seriously, Mark Zuckerberg, what did you do? Music taste is something. So Apple, iTunes, they got it right. You know, they understood that music is not just MP3 player is not just a function. It's not just a thing that plays music. A program that plays music, like iTunes, is not just a program. You know, it's my music. It's my life. And there are other things. I mean, there are other things that are not technical and that have an high disposition value. This one, for example, is a to-do list for another girl that I observed, and these to-do lists, I mean, she was tech-savvy. She was so well equipped with all kind of Mac products, and she was a design student and really, really on top. And these lists were just everywhere. And she said she couldn't work. If she would lose her laptop, okay, but if she would lose her to-do list for the week, that was actually what she did. And she was all constantly writing them. So these things are also, and you know, that's again, why do we always think in digital terms? We have to connect these things. We have to contextualize them. So you can play a bit around with these. You know, you can map things. You can take people, and then of course you can't do it for every single person. You have to develop personas on basis of how people are actually working with different artifacts, which role they play. So this is kind of like a model that I had for that. And yeah, you have to kind of get to this. Again, you really have to give things a meaning. Because digital natives, and I just say it again because people tend to forget that digital natives don't care about the functional value. That doesn't mean that the functional value can disappear, you know, we still need it. But it has to be really in there. So what to do? Get to know your user. I mean, I know, this is kind of something you probably have heard like 5 billion times. I mean, I was in this conference, Media Evolution, and the whole conference is basically about get to know your user. But what I mean is, that you're not only supposed to know your user in a certain area of where like, you know, if you want to know, if you want to develop an app for like maps or something, you don't really want to look only on where your user goes every day. You want to know everything about your user. You want to know the whole story. And that's the beauty of ethnography and qualitative analysis, you know? You can't do that with questionnaires, with quantitative analysis. So get to know them, get to know their life history, because it plays a role. Because, again, the functionality is not the important part of a new product. Well, yeah, not in that sense. Contextualize, that's what I mean. Digital media don't happen in a vacuum, and this is also something that people often forget. You have a new company, you think, okay, I want to put this company on Facebook and I want to make a cool presentation of my company on Facebook. That's very fine, but it's not going to work like that. You have to develop the whole system. You can't just say, here, you know, it's Facebook, you know, it's cool, right, because it's on Facebook. And, yeah, then again, attach values. Find a certain value that is embedded in a product that is potentially there, and attach it to the product. So, well, a reason why I said that I would really, really like to do this is because I want to kind of market myself, and not only me, but in particular my discipline, because I think, well, I'm coming from in Lund, I'm coming from the Institute for Culture, Institution for Kulturvetenskaper, and yeah, actually, yeah, it's a bit of marketing here, because we want to really work in that more. So we developed a program, it's called Digitala Kultura, and because we think that in this discipline, when you're working with this kind of series, we are best equipped, you know. But I mean, every discipline thinks that all the time. So, but I think we are in particularly well equipped. So if you're kind of interested in everything, this program is still in the making. It's in the valideringsprocessen. So you know, it's this university, old institution. You know, they have to go. It has to go through all the bureaucratic levels. But if you want to follow us, we have a Twitter and we have at a homepage that is also very much in the making, as you can see on the WordPress.com. Yeah, and for myself, of course, I am also using all these kind of marketing channels. So if you want to check me out, digitaleverydaylife.com or Twitter, Mareike Digital. And I would love to discuss with you, or if you have questions or anything, to discuss this. Because I think I did this from the perspective of someone working at a university. But yeah, I want to know how much is actually already happening in that matter. And I think it's actually big companies that have more problems with that, but that's more a hypothesis of me. Yeah, so thanks for listening, and please, discussion. I need input. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Just a bit. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's a very interesting concept, especially because I come from a product management piece, where whenever you're thinking about bringing a product out to the market, you need to define personas, just like you said, find out what their value drivers are for the type of product that you have. So maybe it's a little bit different, the order that you're suggesting here. But, and also whenever you're going into digital social media and you're thinking about the digital users, you need to broaden that up, because it's not just a particular product with a particular feature, just like you said, that they're needing, but it's in a broader sense. I just was wondering, how do you see different age segments adapting to this technology? You talk about natives, and by now I personally see a very big difference between what you would call a 20-something versus a teenager versus somebody that has not gotten there. You are welcome to come to my house. My 11-year-old yesterday said, I had 500 text messages. He lives with his text message in his hand. So it's a very different approach, but I think also it's different between somebody that has not achieved a teenage age, a teenager, and a 20-something. So I don't know if you have some comments on that.
Yeah, actually, first of all, I want to say, well, I mean, I want to say 500 text messages is this kind of thing that doesn't really mark a digital native. I just say that because I know many people in their 50s who get 500 text messages a day. I mean, you know, everyone can learn this. It's to begin with. I mean, everyone can learn, but that doesn't make them a native. Personally, I think that the generation that is 20-something now is kind of in the middle of this. And I completely agree. I did a lot of field work, I didn't mention it, but I did a lot of field work in a German school, but I didn't mention it because it just started. And I also want to say, very surprising, to be honest, even to me, there are much less using digital media than the students did that I observed. Much less. I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe it's Germany, but I mean, the statistics say that we're all very connected in Germany as well. There are statistically no differences. But what I heard very often is like, where's the point? We have to hand in our schoolwork, we have to hand in on paper. And I mean, my cell phone was exciting the first 3 weeks. And then it wasn't anymore. It does, you know, that just on a side note, I mean. But I don't know, with the age groups, as I said, I think, of course, this is a fluid process. You can't say everyone born before 1990 is a digital immigrant or before 1980 or whatever. You can't do that. It's more about how they have, and I definitely do think that kids who have grown up in the forest, or I don't know, you know, can still be digital immigrants, you know. I mean, it's a very fluent concept, a very loose concept. So, yeah, I don't know. I just really want to say, again, it's not about, because this is a mistake that people often do. They always think it's about the quantity of media consumed, but it's not. You know, there are kids who never use, there are kids who don't have Facebook accounts, and still they will use internet different than their parents. I have a very nice example for that, actually, and I always tell people. I completely forgot to tell it. When my mother uses emails, she you know, checking your email account, or I even set her up a Facebook now, so even that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that belong to that. You need to have an internet connection, you need to have a computer, you need to have a browser, you know, a lot of, as we call them, actor in this actor network that we have. And if any of these actors fails, you know, if she can't log into Facebook, if the internet connection breaks down, if the computer doesn't start, whatever, too many things that can go wrong. My mom will be like, what am I doing? You know, because the whole network of things is shaken. It's interrupted, you know, the whole thing. And she will probably call me, that's what she does then, you know. And if one of these things breaks, if I can't log into Facebook, well, it'll never happen. But if it should ever happen, well, you know, I will be like, yeah, whatever, I just go to my next, just go to Twitter and write something there, you know. Or I will go to Google and Google Facebook is not working or something, you know, and find solutions, and I will react fluently around it. And that's, I think, one of the major differences. Again, it's not about the quantity. It's not that I'm checking my Facebook much more often than my mom does. It's just about the how. Then again, maybe I'm not even a digital native. I don't know what these kids do then. I mean, you know, I'm born after, I'm born before 1990, so. Yeah, sorry. I get very excited about this topic. Yeah, okay. Any more questions or comments or anything, please?
I have one observation, really. How many here are considering themselves as digital natives? Yeah, sure.
I'll explain. I worked with computers since 1971.
Okay.
So that's
when I was born.
Yeah. So that's quite a long time.
But
so I think I'll slide into it anyway. Okay. Maybe at the edge, but still.
Yeah. I just want to say one important thing, and I know this is offending I remember when I talked to there was like a woman that kind of helped me a bit with my research, and I presented the concept to her, and she was offended, and she was like, so that means I'm not a digital native, but look, I have an iPad, and you know, and she was really offended, and now, you know, and I'm offending people, you know, with that, because many people, I don't say that digital immigrants can be digital experts. Many are. Many of the digital immigrants that are probably sitting in this room are probably most likely digital experts, as I call them. But they're not digital immigrants, I'm sorry. And that is nothing that makes you worse or a worse person or anything. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, you will never speak the language as fluent as your 11-year-old daughter or son does, you know? It's just, well, I mean, I'm saying that now very like strict and everything. I mean, of course, this is kind of a very fluid concept, and for some of you might be no, I'm kidding. But just get that image out of your brain that it is about knowledge. Like how do, another good example, I have so many good examples, right? I've been working on that for a long time. I tell people, the iPad is for old people. And the first reaction I got when the iPad came out, I actually said that. And many people said, no, the iPad is for like Mac freaks, you know, for like these tech freaks who want to have an iPad. And I said, yeah, no, because Apple didn't need another I mean, seriously, these people, like you, for example, I mean, you have one. And I said,
I'm old.
But no, that's not what I wanted to say, actually. That was not what I said. I wanted to say, he would have bought anything that Apple would have come out with. There was no need to develop a cool new product for him, seriously. Or for any of these. For me either, you know, I would have probably, I don't have one, I want one, so.
You can have
it. For old people, and I think, now I meet more and more old people, and I'm very happy that my hypothesis was right. Because many people, many immigrants still connect the computer with work, you know. And they have the computer, this is something they do in their everyday lives, they do from 9 to 5 in their job. And then they come home, and it's leisure time. And I say that as an example for this whole concept, because this is again something where people think in terms of experts or people who are interested in technology. This concept of digital native and digital immigrant has nothing to do with expert or non-experts. Okay, experts, they will buy an iPad, they will buy everything because it's cool and they want to have it. But old people, they won't. You know, and then Apple designed just something, and I think this is pretty genius, to be honest. And I don't believe it's all Steve Jobs. They just said, okay, so we make a device that is basically a computer, and they can do all the cool stuff with it, what they want. I mean, it's not that old people never watch movies online, you know, old people, immigrants, but it doesn't look like a computer, you know. And for natives, you don't have to do that, because for natives, the look, the functionality is not it's just there, you know. They don't care what it looks like, because a computer is not ideologized because it is a computer. Ideologized in a positive way or in a negative way. No, that's the thing. I mean, I hate these discussions. Like every time people start talking about how bad it is that these young people, they're online all the time, you know, and what does it do with knowledge, and you know, I mean, these young people, they're on Wikipedia. Like, how can they work academically? It's like, yeah, I mean, you know, they just do it differently. And then on the other hand, I also don't like if people start talking like, oh, these new kids, I mean, it's so amazing what my kid can do with a computer. Most of the time I would say, no, he can't. I mean, if I fix someone else's computer, it's like 9 of 10 times trial and error. That's exactly what's happening. It's like, oh, this doesn't work, then I just try this, and then I just try this. Why can't the digital immigrant do it? Because, again, we're talking in networks. This doesn't work. Oh, no, I don't know what to do anymore. You know? One network is interrupted, doesn't work. So the whole trial and error process doesn't really work for most immigrants. Yeah, I think it's kind of this whole thinking of. I think we still have this in our system, this whole. But it's about, you know, it's about knowledge. It's not about knowledge. I think that's what I want to say. It's not about knowledge.
Is it about breaking the habit? that we traditionally do. I have some thoughts about the big difference between digital natives and digital immigrants also is that digital immigrants know the alternative. I often say, humoristically, that digital immigrants, we know how 14.4 modem, the sound of a known modem. The digital natives don't, because the internet is there, it's like air, it's breathing it. So there are no alternatives to not being connected. But being the digital natives, we know that we had to put the modem on, wait for 15 minutes, and we still waited to be connected, did our thing on the internet, and then disconnected again, because we couldn't talk on the phone at the same time. That was the alternative. Now, when we come to that realization, and when we come to the point when something is broken or whatever it is, when we sit on a computer, okay, what did I used to do? What did I do before? And then we do the same thing, where we go back to the old traditions, the old ways. But the digital natives don't have that. They just do.
Even though I would say that there's definitely a generation of people, actually they also have a name, that's not coming from me, it's called digital, how do you, no, the settlers. And I think that's pretty interesting as a concept, you know? Like people like Bill Gates, for example, they're like digital settlers, you know? I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, there's kind of, and maybe that's, I mean, talking about age groups again, I definitely think there's a group of people that you could call settlers, you know? I mean, my parents, for example, they're over 60 now, no, almost. And they're not, you know, they never really work with a modem, you know? But they have to now, I mean, they have to, you know, they get all these computer classes and stuff, you know? It's not that they never interact with technology now. But then there's this middle generation that is kind of, you know the stuff already, you know? And then sometimes I have the feeling that this middle generation is a bit overrun by the development because they're kind of in between. And it's really, really, really hard to keep up. I mean, seriously. If you go into the research world in academia, where research projects usually take between 3 and 5 years, you know? More or less, it's kind of, you know, when you start, we have one guy at our institute who actually started his dissertation in 1980 or something about telephone, and I think about the telephone and you know the landline, and this poor guy is probably never going to finish it because there's not so much he can actually. I mean, it's just the whole research. I mean, I wish I could read his research proposal that he wrote in 1980. So this is definitely. I mean, this is something that I would also really like to look into, in how fast digital natives are actually in their thinking, because this is an argument that is made, and it's not really scientifically made yet. That's kind of a strange thing. I mean, scientists are a bit scared of the whole topic, like in academia and social scientists.
But that's why then your models will be extremely interesting, and your network models will be very interesting, because if you do them anyway in a qualitative manner, you will have certain values, and they will be good, very good, or bad, and those ones will get some numbers, or somehow you're going to input them into this network thing that is going to give you some results back. So if you are able to discern between a native and an immigrant, then you will be able to bring out certain values and how social media has different value drivers for them, and then from a industry perspective, from a product perspective, then people will be better guided as to how to tailor their product according to those different groups.
I have to quantify my concepts.
Well, in a certain way, right? I mean, you're going to get the, well, I love it, and well, it works for me, and I just hate it, right? And then there's some other aspects of usability that are going to get this qualitative type of approach, but then if you're able to put that into a somehow quantitative, semi-quantitative way, then you can use partially squares or some different kind of mathematical model that actually you can get things out as you interrogate this model, right? And so it's very interesting, because then your field is extremely interdisciplinary, becomes very disruptive, which we're talking about right now, and you're able to then bring a different perspective, a more structured perspective to social media that I don't think people have been able to grasp today yet. So that will be of extreme value for you going forward, as well as to the whole community.
I definitely think, I mean, I'm not good in
You don't need to. You don't need to. You need to collaborate with somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely think so. I mean, I'm gonna start in Uppsala University in January, and I'm gonna work in the Institute for Informatics and Media, and this is very interdisciplinary. And we're working with human-computer interaction. I think, I've been working in industry, and what is unfortunately one of the things that I thought was I found very curious was that that in, for example, personas I talked about. You know, the common way how to do it, how to develop personas, is designers are sitting together and just make them up. You know, I mean, I'm not just saying that. That's actually how it works. And you can actually, there's literature about personas, designers just sitting together and coming with something up. And then there's the other extreme, which is very often happening in the marketing compartment of you have product development and you have marketing compartment. And I know that from, for example, Ericsson, some companies start to kind of merge it a bit. But it's still, the marketing department is kind of they're quantifying a lot, they're using a lot of quantitative methods, and they're doing a little bit in this direction, trying to get behind the user culture. And then there's the designers who have to sort of, they're working pretty detached from each other. And this is also where I think there has to be a rethinking. The marketing department that is developing the whole social media strategy, for example, they're thrown then together suddenly with a product or with personas or with an idea of a user that the designers came up with in a completely different compartment. And of course, then something like iTunes slash iPod cannot be created like this, They work together because they contextualized both, They said, okay, the hardware and the software they have to kind of get together with the culture, and you have to mix it up, and then you get the music, the music of someone's life. Spotify, this is amazing. Seriously, is anyone here who has met someone from Spotify? I would really love to talk to them. Because every time I go in Germany, we don't have Spotify, and this is kind of ridiculous, but it's like this whole copyright. This is a whole different thing, parties. But if you go to a party in Germany, it's a completely different culture. Spotify shaped Swedish, or not only Swedish, but Spotify shaped music listening culture. How amazing is that? Like, I want to really meet these people, seriously. I mean, we have it's kind of, now my thoughts are going a bit away, but if anyone knows someone on Spotify, I would really like to talk to them one day.
Ben is on Twitter, so you can talk to him.
Yeah, I'm very bad with Twitter. Maybe I should be better with Twitter, and this is also, by the way, a very interesting thing is what I was wondering about the other day. Is Twitter something for immigrants or for natives?
What do you think?
Immigrants.
Why?
Natives are one-to-one communication. So in my opinion, I'm probably wrong, but for me, the digital natives want the dialogue between one person and another person. We digital immigrants think we know so much about the digital natives, we want to communicate to all. So we don't have in Twitter the threaded conversation.
You could have. I disagree on that.
You could have. There are alternatives to how you use Twitter.
Yeah.
But the digital natives don't want the alternative. They want the direct action.
I think
self-consciousness. Just to concept.
I'm thinking, for example, when I'm writing something on Twitter, I'm very conscious about it. Like my Facebook, I'm just using, and I'm just like, oh, whatever. But when I'm writing something on Twitter, and I think many people are like that, Twitter is more and more a marketing tool, a self-marketing tool. I mean, if you write something in Twitter, that kind of, because everyone can read it, everyone. And it's just not as natural embedded in my everyday life, it feels different, and that's why I think it's more an immigrant thing, because every message that I've sent over Twitter is sort of ideologized information in some way,
But isn't it a matter of habits, what you're used to?
Maybe. I don't know.
So.
How do you Twitter?
Pardon?
How do you Twitter? I mean, if you Twitter,
I don't post the same things on Twitter as on Facebook. But on the other hand, because I'm concerned about the fact that more people could, in theory, read my tweets. In theory, I think it's actually no difference.
Yeah.
We had a discussion, me and Bengt, on Facebook really about how we use the difference between Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn and all the other services. And the bottom line there, what I suppose was that we have different needs for different services, different networks. So we speak on Twitter with that need and that followers that we have on Twitter, and we have another discussion on Facebook, another. For me, Facebook is more personal, more private. Twitter can be more open, more public, more general. And we have LinkedIn that's very professional, very down to earth and down to point. So we have the need for having all those networks at different moments, different times.
But Facebook is going that way too, with their open graph and the subscriptions, so you can open up a profile.
Yeah.
And
But I still think that Facebook will be the personal, private, more private personal than Twitter. You have the same technology, the same method, yes, it's still not the same people.
But I had a very, very interesting thought actually the other day about Google. Actually, when Google Plus came out with their circles, I had a pretty interesting thought about that. Because, you know, when Mark Zuckerberg presented the new Facebook, he said something interesting. He said, like, he said the whole time, like, okay, and now you can actually have your, you know, everyone, you can express your identity, you know, you can show yourself. And that's, I mean, you know, we as anthropologists and also sociologists, there's no inner self to people, you know? Like a human being is always kind of an accumulation of different roles that are embedded in the habitus. So then when Google Plus came out with this circles, I thought that's not going to work for me. because I'm writing something that's completely, extremely nerdy anthropology talking, you know, something I post a link from, I don't know, really nerdy, and only my anthropology friends are going to click on it. But actually somehow, I want to see that all my friends can see it, and not only my anthropology friends. Because it's kind of, this is how I define myself, you know? This is how I want the world to know who I am. You know, this is my stage, the live stream is my stage. And then on the other hand, I want to have control over it. I mean, that's the other thing. If suddenly everyone can see, I mean, you can switch it off, the whole Spotify thing, but if suddenly everyone can see what crappy music I listen to, that I listened to the 20 times to this really crappy mainstream song last night, you know, 20 times in a row, I mean, I don't want people to see that, you know, I want to control that information. So I do actually think that something is also happening there where, I actually wrote that also the other day, because it's kind of getting annoying that I had the feeling that there were people at Facebook sitting there and they were thinking, oh, those kids, they don't care about their privacy, you know? It's like, yeah, they don't, I mean, they're like connected and they're sharing everything and their information. But they do. They just do it differently, you know? They just, you know, this is a big discussion in Germany about privacy issues. I mean, here in Sweden, where everyone can see everyone's birthday just by going and street address and everything, just by going on a homepage. It's maybe different, but in Germany, it's a huge discussion, and like everyone says, oh, these kids, they don't care about their privacy. And then these people on Facebook are like, oh, these kids don't care about their privacy. They won't care. They won't even notice if suddenly everyone can see their music listening on Spotify. They will like it because it shows their inner self. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to see that. I don't want to present that certain part of my inner self on Facebook, you know. So it's kind of a very, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding between the generations. A lot of, just try to understand them a bit better, you know. Just, you know, they're not, it's not that they don't care, you know. They just have a different way of expressing it. No, my thoughts are also going away, I'm sorry. I'm getting carried away. I just dealt with that topic for such a long time. So.
We have two minutes before we go to the next point. Quick question. When do you think we will know the digital natives?
Never, I mean, that's always no. I think the question will be obsolete, because in 30 years we all, I don't know, like 50 years or whatever, yeah, there's only going to be digital natives, and the digital natives are going to think about the generation that comes after. and who knows how they will call them. But at the moment, I think actually what I would just really want to do, it's not, you can't really know, first of all, digital natives, I'm of course not digital natives, that's the tricky thing, that's the thing with consumers, not all consumers are the same. I think it's more important that you stop seeing them as one big bunch of people, like with this Facebook thing what I talked about, it's not like those kids of today, they're always online, that's like, what are those kids, There are these really, I remember when I was in high school, the alternative people, they didn't have a cell phone, and then there were the tech-savvy people who had a cell phone, and now it's different, now all the kids have a cell phone, but then again there are still the alternative left-wing people, and then there's the tech-savvy people, and there are still the rockers, and the I don't know, all these different kind of people, and we tend to forget that, because we think, yeah, but they all have the same cell phone, this is not a cell phone, they have all the smartphone, and whatever, so we just develop something for their smartphone, and they're all going to be happy.
Is it that we use this technology for an excuse to make out these target groups?
A bit, I think.
Okay.
Many personas are kind of structured like tech-savvy, non-tech-savvy. It's like, okay, as if all tech-savvy people would be the same to begin with. I mean, but don't get me started on the whole Mac versus open source discussion, etc. Yeah? No, but we could at least try, to understand that.
Okay.
Just try.
Any more questions about the digital natives and America? Okay. Thank you very much. It's really interesting. Disrupt. Are there any disruptive people in here? Anyone with a disruptive idea? A disruptive thought? Don't be shy. Could be whatever. Awkward silence. This is maybe not that disruptive, but what about, has anyone all seen the new Facebook, we're going back to Facebook, unavoidable. Has everybody seen the new Facebook profile, the timeline? Okay. Is that some kind of disruptive, that we're going to see another type of behavior on Facebook? That we some kind of connect the Facebook to what we did in time? Disagree? Agree? Anyone?
It changes people's behavior, because I read them digging out our photos and scanning because they wanted a complete timeline from whenever they were born and up to today.
Yeah.
So it kind of creates actions.
Will there be, in the near future, an alternative to Facebook?
Of course.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
And what would that look like?
I don't know.
I think it would be a millionaire.
But I mean, what future are we talking about? Are we talking about next year, 10 years?
What is the future? 3 months?
No, I mean,
5 years.
I mean, there's many discussions in Germany, for example, about the open source alternative to Facebook, and there are often attempts to do it. And everyone is always, the thing is, everyone is always complaining about Facebook. As soon as they have a certain, like if they renew something about themselves, that's like, oh god, the wall is cluttered.
It takes 3 hours and they're just back to normal.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
And also all the open source alternatives that always comes along and pops up, just a week or two before they launch the new services, Facebook's already did it.
But what about, right now you have Google Plus,
Google
right?
Plus.
And everybody decided that they needed to have an account there, everybody needed to set up everything, and then you have these discussions and Twitter, where you wonder, are they going to get anywhere? And like somebody described it to me, it's like, well, the lights are on, I have put everything there, but nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And so,
Is it a new behavior that we want? Not a new service, not a new kind of connection. It's a new kind of, maybe it's not on the internet. It could be something that's air.
May I say something about this timeline? Because I know everyone is very enthusiastic about it, but it makes me feel like a dinosaur or something, an item on a museum actually. And I'm thinking about, would this work? Because I don't like it.
I think it looks nice.
It looks
nice.
It looks nice. I can agree with that one.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, I never use my profile. Personally, I never use the profile. Now I'm never going to use a timeline. It's really all about the looks for me, because this is like the thing that people find when they Google me or when they search for me, you know? Someone meets me on a party and thinks, okay, now I'm going to stalk her, this is where they get to. And then, you know, like, okay, I never really used it, you know, my home base, you know, what Mark Zuckerberg called the home, you know, that has always been the live feed, you know? So I think that's also what I wanted to get out of, you know? Oh yeah, of course.
I have this,
this is what it looks like.
I have this quote from Felix Strömberg, who said Facebook shows that they want to be the campfire, and they allow us to sell beer. So with the open bar, because everybody can.
But what I think, for example, interesting, what I've just thought is, no one is actually using anything else than Word.
That's not me, that's my son. Yeah, sorry.
But twice in a row, just saying.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
Funny thing about the ticker with the Spotify songs. Actually, Fredrik Vass, also known as Flickr, he put a status in his Facebook account saying, "That's enough, I'm removing the Spotify ticker." And then Daniel Ek from Spotify commented. And then, like, I think it was yesterday, they updated the client with an option to turn off the Spotify.
You can actually choose which list you want to publish and which
So
don't want to.
that was like 1 week ago, this project came up on Facebook.
Yeah, you can switch it off somehow, and that's like the first thing I did.
Yeah, they updated it yesterday.
Yeah,
I think this is something that will develop by time.
So they listen to the
Yeah.
feedback.
But it's just really interesting that and also another thing, I mean, they just come out with it, and people were so upset. I mean, I've never seen people so upset about also the Spotify thing.
Is this a discussion that we can take with us to when we leave the new Facebook timeline, good or bad, the future of Facebook, to keep that discussion going on the Facebook page, of course, and the web page. We nowadays have a nice little web page, smcskane.se. So please go there and keep up the discussion, and let's see if we can all find a solution for Spotify and Facebook the next time we meet. Could we do that?
Yes.
How many will be back next time? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Ida?
Ja, nu tar vi svenska Skåne redan. Jättekul att så många kom idag. Verkligen toppen. Och Marika gjorde en fantastisk presentation. Jag är helt upplyft och så hem och tänker igenom saker och ting. Som ni ser så har vi ändrat lite den här gången så att vi nu tar stolarna, försöker sätta dem i bordet så att slipper jag ta 18 stolar själv, vilket är ganska tråkigt. Och sen ni som känner för det att ni vill prata vidare om digitala natives, eller om inte sådana finns, så ska åtminstone jag och äta lunch i välfärden och vill hemskt gärna ha sällskap av så många som möjligt. Sen precis som Dave sa så har vi en hemsida. Besök den gärna, länka gärna om ni har bloggar, om ni har Twitterkonton och sånt, så kommer hashtaggen SMC-Skåne att ligga ett flöde där hela tiden. Och jag vet att jag och Elin Kasperpitter här, vi har försökt att twittra ut lite under det här idag, men jag inser att det är ganska svårt att både twittra och försöka vara en aktiv lyssnare. Där har vi hemsidan, superfin. Vi finns också på Facebook. Och då är det ju jättehärligt om så många som möjligt anmäler sig till nästa gång. Och kan det inte komma så ta bort det så jag kan räkna stolar och lite sånt. Nästa gång så hade vi hoppats att Andrea Mabende om kommentarstorsfälten skulle komma. Han sitter nu och väntar på om han ska börja en kurs eller inte. Så att vi får tyvärr återkomma om exakt vad föredraget ska komma. Däremot så är det den 27 oktober vi kör, vilket är en torsdag.
Och det kommer vara i auditoriet dessutom.
Ja, så.
Så det är plats för fler.
Precis. Så att, ja, Så fortsätt denna diskussion på Twitter, på Facebook-sida, på hemsidan, mellan varandra. Och så går vi och äter lunch.
Ja!
Ja!